Hey everybody, Tony D. You might be able to see little Joan over there. She's in her little carry-on, having a nice bone. More news. The headlines exhausted me in the last video, but I thought I'd share a few more, and they're just nuts. Newsom vows changes after vaccine earmarked for Black Latino residents improperly used by others. Why are you earmarking vaccines based on race? That's not how viruses work. Viruses don't attack people based on their race. We have to inoculate the elderly and people with comorbidities. And yes, some studies have shown that certain minorities might have more comorbidities in certain communities. Okay, but don't do it by race. Race is not the factor. It's the comorbidities and the age that is the factor. Newsom is a moron. You have to recall him. He's damaging people. He's just not as bad as Cuomo, I guess, but my God, how much more can you stand from this moron? This moron who would go to a fancy French restaurant while you're locked down at home, while your business goes under, while he gives your tax money to people from foreign countries who sneak into your state. Does he want an entire state of nothing but illegal aliens? That seems where he wants to go. It seems like he'd like a state like that. Just millions upon millions of people from other country, foreign nationals, trapped in California, illegally working for various businesses, I suppose. He is awful. Get rid of him. Recall him. And speaking of awful, imagine a future without prisons. Yes, these people, and when I mean these people, I mean the woke, the left. The left has no race. It is all one big wokeness. And the big wokeness is, listen to this article. This is from NBC News. Aim Kaba wants us to imagine a future without prisons. Kaba's phone rang incessantly as the media tried to make sense of the Defund the Police movement. That interest inspired her latest book. That is absolutely not why the media called. They didn't need to make sense of anything, because as everyone knows by now, the mainstream media already writes their articles before they call anybody. They're just calling for a soundbite. Last summer, thousands across the country gathered in the streets, painting Black Lives Matter on asphalt, marching with fists raised and shouting in the bullhorns after the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and several other people. Yeah, that's what happened. There was mostly peaceful protest, you see. There was no buildings burned or people murdered. David Dorn, I guess he wasn't murdered during these police riots on Facebook, where he bled out. Oh no, we could just ignore all that and say it was just one big summer of love. Many of the chants were simple. No justice, no peace. Black Lives Matter. Oh, there were a few other chants you may have missed, like looting is reparations. We support the criminals. We're trained Marxists. Or how about when they passed out bricks? How about when Black Lives Matter activists had to confront Antifa to get them to stop vandalizing a Starbucks? Remember that? I do. Oh, but it was all one big hippie love-in, according to this. One declaration stood out: defund the police. Yes, it stood out very well in Minneapolis. And how did that work out? Oh, crime skyrocketed. Police quit. And now the city is scrambling to hire more police back because they realized that's stupid. But it was a moment Mary Aim Kaba always knew would come, continues the article. quote, all of a sudden people had a real interest in abolitionist thinking and abolitionist organizing. Did they? Did they, or were they mad about a video they saw on YouTube about a guy getting murdered? Who they thought was murdered anyway. And, you know, the video was out of context. Although, I don't think the cops treated him great, but I don't think they intended to kill the guy. And here's the ironic part. Every time BLM picks a person to be their martyr, they pick the worst one. There have been people murdered by the police. There have been horrible murders. Oh, but if they don't fit the profile, if the timing's not right, I guess they just skip over them. They don't have the right color skin. Oh, well. There was a guy, he was suffocated by the cops. They held them down. They held him down too long and choked him out, and he died like Eric Gardner. I forget his name, sadly, but I saw the video. It's horrific. And, you know, that was a real case where the police used too much force and actually killed the guy. This guy wasn't in trouble. He wasn't high that I could see. He wasn't going bananas in a Wendy's parking lot. He didn't take he complied with the cops. George Floyd asked to be put on the ground. He was extremely erratic. He was begging the cops the moment they got there, before they started doing anything. The guy in Wendy's stole a police taser and fired back. Breonna Taylor was part of a local drug gang. And yet, these are all propped up as martyrs to the BLM cause. There are plenty of other people that could have been martyrs. And they would have been, honor students who were accidentally shot. But they don't want to prop up those for some reason. I think maybe, and this is just a theory, that the Democratic backers built in a self-destruct sequence for BLM. Yeah. I mean, I could see them doing that. They're very sort of like that. They're very clever in that way. But this abolitionist movement, first off, the word abolitionist was about the slave movement, to abolish the slaves. Now they're trying to apply it to prisons and cops. And what she talks about the prison industrial complex, and there's some truth to that. The prison industrial complex is a thing, and it's bad. They treat, in some states, prisoners horribly. They work them, they don't get paid, they're kind of like slave labor. I mean, they get paid something, but not what they're worth. They're charged a lot of money while they're in jail to make phone calls and buy necessities. They're not charged appropriately. But part of the problem is this woman sees all these injustices. Well, guess where she's from? Chicago. Who runs Chicago? Democrats. They've been running Chicago in the ground for decades. Yeah, it's really bad. Oh my, it's so bad. We need more Democrats. I mean, this is insane that this woman can't see the forest for the trees. It's Democratic policies that have run these cities into the hole. Rahm Emanuel presided over Chicago as the mayor. He had a huge scandal. They opened their own version of Gitmo. They actually took suspects, the cops, to a secret location where nobody knew where they were and tortured them. Now, they didn't torture them as bad as Gitmo, but it was pretty much torture. They left guys handcuffed and in cells. Nobody knew where they were. Their lawyers couldn't find them. Their families couldn't find them. Sometimes they were roughed up a bit, but mostly they were just hidden. Now imagine you get arrested and you get no phone call and you're in a cell. No one will tell you why. No one will read you your rights. No one will tell you where you are. And you can't call anybody. After a couple of days of that, you're freaking out. That was their version of Gitmo. And a couple of guys got beaten too. I don't think anybody died. But, surprise, surprise, one of the guys involved in setting that up actually worked at Gitmo. It was a huge scandal in Chicago. Oh, but according to people like this, it's all about abolishing the police and the prison system completely. I don't think if Rahm Emanuel had been thrown out of office along with everybody connected to that horror, I don't think stuff like that would happen. I think the police would reform. You'd have a possibly a Republican, but maybe a different kind of Democrat come in and reform the police. And you can't get rid of the cops. You can't. Because if you get rid of them, something will take their place. And in the case of Antifa, it's them. See the Chaz. And here's NBC again, basically promoting the same idea and the same book in another article on their website, I think on the same day. Abolishing the police and prisons is a lot more practical than critics claim. And it's about this woman's book. We Do This Till We Free Us is a pragmatic playbook for a world without walls. Oh, yeah. Now listen to this. Pinoa Berlatsky, cultural critic. Skeptics often argue that abolishing the police and our prison system is impractical. How will you stop people from murdering if there aren't any police? How will you punish sexual offenders or robbers if there are no prison? Abolition, or at least until recently in the public conversation, has generally been treated as a movement for utopian fanaticists, rather than for serious policy wonks concerned with hammering out the gritty iron realities of justice. Yeah, there's a reason for that, because it is fantasy. Marianne Kaba's new book, We Do This Till We Free Us, Abolitionist Organizing and Transforming Justice, refutes this caricature. Flipping such criticism on its head, she writes that prison and police abolitionists are the realists here. And their critics are the ones wandering around with their heads strategically placed in the clouds. Kaba is an organizer and educator who founded Project NIA to work against youth incarceration. She's been doing abolitionist work for more than 2 decades in Chicago and New York. Well, there you go. See Chicago and New York now. Her hatred of the spotlight means she's not a household name, but she's inspired a generation and more of black activism. Her new volume collects interviews, essays, blog posts she wrote alone or with her numerous collaborators between 2014, the year of the uprisings in Ferguson, Missouri, and today. Abolitionists are accused of imagining a world without conflict or in which no one does anything wrong. Reading Kaba's book, though, it's clear that she's very aware of brutality and inequity, more so than her critics. Wow, this really is opinion. Her opposition to police and prison starts with the experience of marginalized people who have to deal with police and carceral violence every day. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. It's bad because the cops don't follow the Constitution, and neither do the Democrats that run these cities. They don't treat people like they should be. The Democrats have done this, and you keep voting for them. You voted for them now. It's mostly because there's no job opportunities in these cities. It's mostly because drugs are illegal and organized crime exploits them. So, and then it just goes on and on. I can't read any more of this. Continuing. Oh, and here's one of the reasons you have so many problems in Chicago. Chicago politician calls for ban on Grand Theft Auto video game after string of carjackings. Well, of course. Because that makes total sense. Oh, I know. We'll blame video games. An old video game, I'll have you know. This video game is years old. You're going to say, oh, well, you know, It was the video games, a few years ago. Those video games, oh, they made people crazy. Yeah, this is what you get with Chicago Democrats these days. And you wonder why people are calling for the abolition of the system. That's what they're really calling for. It's the abolition of the system. And the system they want to put in place, well, in a few weeks, what happened in Minnesota? Crime spiked, exactly as I predicted, as every drug kingpin said, ooh, we got an opportunity here. Ooh, we can expand. They've got the money, they've got the guns, and they've got people. And now the cops have fewer people. Plus, you got a city that's half of it was burned down. Everybody's unemployed from beer virus, and you can sell them drugs. It's a win-win for them. For you, it's idiocy to fire the cops. What you have to make them do is follow the rules. What you have to do is prosecute the cops when they break the rules. When they actually break them, not when they do their job, not when they shoot a knife-wielding maniac. When they take a bribe, that's when you prosecute them. When they kill someone with no justification, you prosecute them. When they turn off their body cam and some shady happens, you investigate and prosecute them. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to find crime if you actually want to fight it. Well, I'll end with some happier news, at least some happier headlines from the Epoch Times. I can always count on them. West Virginia bill seeks to recreate Trump's critical race theory ban at state level. Well, hallelujah, praise the Lord. Somebody knows that critical race theory is bad. That's going to shoot West Virginia's test score average right up the ladder. So good for them. Twitter removes hundreds of accounts it says are linked to Iran, Russia, and Armenia. I guess. Maybe that'll be the new way to censor people. Oh, you're linked to Iran. Goodbye. I don't know if that's a really good headline, but here's a better one. Facebook reverses ban on news ban on Australia. So that's something. Anyhow. The news today, it's just too much. It's just too much. I'm going to go look at some movie trailers in the next video and just be done with the news today. I can't take it. I can't take it today.